Mr. Zimmermann, Chairman of the National Council of State Tourism Directors, ladies and gentlemen.
Can you hear me okay? Yes, okay. So we're going to talk about Pure Michigan and Travel Michigan. So this is us. This is what we do. We are the state's tourism promotion agency, and primarily what we do is the stuff down here, which is advertising, public relations, websites, one publication. We still do one printed publication, a lot of e-newsletter, digital, social media, et cetera. And our mission is pretty simple, and that's get more leisure visitors to the state to spend money. Great jobs for Michiganders, great taxes for state and local governments. So, and thank you for the intro, and actually, I didn't create the brand myself. I wish I could say I did. You know, in fact, if the agency was not lurking around here somewhere, I might try to get away with that, but actually they're not. But actually it was McCann Erickson, our advertising agency, who helped us create Pure Michigan in 2006. And for us, for Travel Michigan and for the state, I think this was kind of a sea change event, the creation of Pure Michigan, and so McCann gets the credit for the heavy lifting on creating the branding and the advertising, and so I'm going to play a spot or two.
$25,000 mornings, give or take, is all we humans get. We spend them on treadmills, we spend them in traffic, and if we get lucky, really lucky, it dawns on us to go spend them in a world where a simple sunrise can still be magic. 25,000 mornings. Make sure some of them are pure Michigan. Your trip begins at michigan.org.
So the first line of that spot is 25,000 mornings, give or take, is all we humans get. And I will tell you that's part of the genius of what McCann's created, because that, I will tell you, is not your typical tourism ad copy. Because that sentence is about mortality. And so what they've created is this big, expansive, kind of powerful view of what the Michigan experience is, called Pure Michigan. And you know, when we look at the advertising they've created, and we have a lot of TV commercials now, we add some every year. We've been doing this now for 6 years. We know it's that combination of McCann's writing, the writers on staff at McCann, the agency, the voice work by Tim Allen, his delivery of those written words, the music, which is the track from the film The Cider House Rules in the late 90s. It has nothing to do with Michigan, just a beautiful piece of music, and the imagery for the TV. You know, so it's kind of those four brand elements that make Pure Michigan's commercials what they are. But it really does start with the writing. So here's another one.
They shelter us from the storm. They teach us that beauty grows with age. They give us the air we breathe. And they can explode into colors we never thought possible. The nature of trees reminds us that there are bigger things in life than us. A lesson best learned in a 19 million acre land of giants. Welcome to the woods of Pure Michigan. Your trip begins at michigan.org.
So the nature of trees reminds us there are bigger things in life than us. Again, it's not your typical, I mean, that's a fall spot, right? The fall TV commercial. We never, the word fall nor autumn, neither appears in that spot. Again, it's that very clever, powerful writing that makes Pure Michigan what it is. Now, we do other advertising. This is a print ad, you know, and it's a very nice print ad. But one thing we learned a long time ago is that the strongest executions of Pure Michigan are broadcast. And you know, in some ways, in fact, I was meeting with a potential vendor yesterday, and they're in the digital space, digital marketing space, you know, and the big move in the advertising world is away from broadcast and to digital because of the web and everything else. But in a funny way, we're kind of old school. You know, we're doing the broadcast because what we learned about our particular campaign and our branding is the broadcast works best for us, whether it's radio or television. And the radio is just as powerful, it just doesn't have the images. It's more the theater of the mind kind of thing, but it is the same kind of writing, same voice work by Tim Allen, same music, et cetera. So beautiful print ad, you know, it's a lovely thing. We do a lot of billboards. There are some up right now for fall. They're good brand reinforcement for us of the Pure Michigan brand, and also a good way to promote our website as the place to get information. So we do a lot of outdoor, both in-state and around the region. We love these. These are Chicago bus wraps. So these aren't city buses, these are tour buses. So the people getting on these buses are about to take their tour of Chicago. And that's what they see as they get on the bus. We like that. My friends at Illinois Tourism, and they really are my friends, they don't like it quite so much. They're less enthusiastic about that. So the campaign's gotten a lot of recognition over the years, and we are, of course, grateful for that. This was one of the biggest back in '09 when we were put on this list by Forbes of one of the top 10 best tourism campaigns ever. Interestingly, we had only started our national advertising that year in 2009. And I'm convinced that if we hadn't gone national in 2009, we would not be on this list because the people who did the judging would have never seen it. It just kind of worked out. We won these 5 awards this year. These are the awards where we compete against other states for advertising, and you can see some of the categories there. There were 12 categories, and we won 5 of them. No other state won more than 1, and obviously many of them didn't win any. So, and again, we've kind of become the poster child for effective tourism marketing brands. So it's not uncommon that this will happen, and that is, in Rhode Island, they were doing a story about their own tourism office and their funding and what they should do about it, what they should do about branding, and so they called us and did a sidebar on us and kind of, again, kind of used Pure Michigan as the example. Chicago, same thing. We get a lot of good positive press coverage, and it's great. Now, a little bit about our money history. So, 2005, and 2005, this is my 4th year here, that's when we bottomed out. That's where we went to the lowest budget we'd been at for a long time. When I started here in '01, I think the budget was around $8 million, and then because of the state's fiscal problems, just every year a little bit less, a little bit less, a little bit less, cut, till we got to $5.7 million. We were down to basically 3 primary out-of-state markets. That's what we could afford to do. And then you'll notice that, but since then, kind of steadily upward. We had one little dip in 10 where things didn't go quite so well in the legislature, so we would have wanted, but it worked out, and we got it back up again in 11, but this kind of steady climb. And I think that, think about what these years were like as far as the state budget. It was a basket case. And so the fact that we were able to get more money appropriated kind of every year for this 5 or 6 years, well, there's a reason for that, and we're going to get to that. And then, so when Governor Snyder came in 2011, he said $25 million for Pure Michigan. Stop fooling around with it. It works. Positive return on investment. You can see his quote there from the state of the state. And I give Governor Snyder a lot of credit, and I am not a partisan. I haven't voted in a primary in 30 years, just so you know. So I give him a lot of credit, though, because he embraced Pure Michigan during his campaign for governor, even though the campaign was created during the previous administration by a governor of the opposite party. And in state politics, which I have been around a long time, that doesn't happen very often. In fact, it's why many state tourism brands coincidentally seem to have a shelf life of either 4 or 8 years, and then they're dead. Because there's that tendency of a new administration when they come in to say, well, if they did it, it can't be any good. We surely can do better. And so they get thrown out. So I give the governor a lot of credit for being out front, being vocal about it, being supportive of Pure Michigan. Again, even though it was created during the previous administration. They didn't create it. It was already there. So here's what we spent the money on this year. This is fairly typical now of our base campaign. Most of it's advertising, and as you look down that list, you'll see most of it is for spring, summer. There's the national cable buy, $12 million for spring, summer, and another $3.5 million in the region. So most of it is advertising, and mostly spring, summer. That's their biggest season by far. And then you see kind of the rest of the breakouts for fall, for winter, et cetera. So the national cable buy. So we went national in 2009, hugely important for us, really changing the face of the business in many ways. So that buys, it was $12 million this year. We have 4 national partners. And so they put in $500,000 each, and that's Ann Arbor, Mackinac Island, the Henry Ford, and Traverse City. And so with that, we purchased about 5,000 airings of Pure Michigan commercials on national cable. In fact, if you saw a Pure Michigan commercial this spring, you were seeing the national airing on cable because we didn't buy any Michigan television. The only way you could have seen a Pure Michigan TV commercial this year was during the national cable airings. So when you saw it, it was running nationally. And here are the networks we bought. kind of a wide range of networks. The national cable buy costs about $1 million a week to purchase. To give some sense of scale, so we're at $25 million for our main campaign. We're now number 6. I can remember when we were 34th, so we've come a long way. People are obviously still spending more than we are, but there you go. The average is about 14.5, so we're certainly doing comparably well. But to give some context, so we're doing a $12 million national buy. Chrysler's 2011 US advertising budget is $1.2 billion. So while we're doing a national buy, it is an incredibly modest national buy, as you can see from this. So last year, visitors spent $17.7 billion. It was up $500 million from the year before. So that's spending by all visitors. And if you look at, about $1 billion in state taxes, and if you look at the 3 major buckets of travel, there's business travel, which was at $4.6 billion. We have 0 influence on that. You know, if you drove to this event and came more than 50 miles, you're on a business trip. You know, no advertising by Travel Michigan is going to make you come here or not come here to this event. It's because you want to attend this event and this conference and this trade show. So business travel we don't really influence. It was up slightly, less than 1%. Travel for leisure by Michigan residents is a bigger pot, $6.3 billion, also up slightly, less than 1%. All of the gain, frankly, was here. Out-of-state leisure. More people coming from out of state spending more. That's our emphasis, obviously. I mean, that's what we're about. We spend about 5 or 10% of the ad budget we have in Michigan, tops, that's it. Frankly, we have so many other ways to get to Michigan residents with our messaging. We don't really need to buy advertising. We do billboards more than anything else. We do a little radio, that's about it. And there are about 200,000 jobs in the business. So here's where we are this year. Through August, most recent data, occupancy, statewide hotel occupancy is at 58.1%, the highest level since 2004. And you see there we have some other highest since 2004 also. So whether it's revenue, whatever, the hotel data is a good barometer on the industry, even though it's only one segment, but it pretty well mirrors what's going on out there as far as travel. Whether it's business travelers or leisure travelers, in-state, out-of-state, this is a good barometer. We expect this to be a gangbuster year for us once the year is over. Everybody I talk to in the business says way up. I mean, substantially up. We had a very good summer. You know, we had the drought and the heat, bad for farmers, good for tourism, because we had very few rain-out weekends, and that kind of thing makes a difference. So this just shows a little bit of what's going on out there with the campaign as far as both the regional markets and the national markets. So the regional markets are the states around us, so it's Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, Wisconsin primarily. The national market is everywhere else, the rest of the country. So you'll see in 2010, regionally, more than half the people in the region were aware of the campaign. Nationally, it was only at 28%, about a quarter. Now, this was year 2 of the national advertising. National started in 2009. By the next year, by last year, jumped to 70% of the region, almost a third, more than a third for national. So what we're seeing is, even though it's a modest national campaign, as far as dollar amount, we're seeing this kind of steady incremental progress. We're seeing it with the spending by out-of-state visitors. We're seeing it with our survey work, that every year, a little better, a little better, a little more, like that. These 2 slides compare a couple things. One is, this one compares the state's image, how the campaign affects the state's image. So in green is people's impression of Michigan if they've seen Pure Michigan advertising. In red is their impression of Michigan if they have not. And so basically, by any of the measures, and there's a lot more of them actually, but this is just a sample, people's impression of Michigan is better if they have seen the advertising. You know, makes sense. If that was not true, we'd have a problem. You know, if the advertising was turning them off, making them feel worse about the state, that would not be a good thing. So that's good. But just as important is this. So in this case, the green is people who have taken a vacation or a leisure trip here. And the red is people who have not. And so what that basically says is that's not really about the campaign, it's about the destination. It's saying that those who have taken a leisure trip here have a much better impression of Michigan than people who've never been here. You know, again, if that was reversed, I probably should look for another kind of work because that would be a problem. But what it says is something that we have believed for a long time, and that is the state way over delivers once we actually get people here. Because I can tell you from all the travel writers we host, which we do a lot of, both nationally and internationally, people coming in to experience Michigan as a destination, the most common phrase at any one of those trips, at the end of any one of those trips, is always the same, and that is, you know, I had no idea. I had no idea. And again, that's why that national advertising push for us was so important. So the other thing we do is we hire a company, a research firm called Longwoods International, to figure out, you know, I mean, I showed the number earlier, like the spending on trips, $17.7 billion. And, you know, that's great. That tells how big the industry is, what's going on kind of on the macro level. Doesn't really say anything about what we're doing. I mean, there are hints at what we're doing, but it's not specific to us. We certainly saw that out-of-state jump, and we think that's at least partially pure Michigan, but it's not specific to the campaign. This is. So what they figure out is how many trips were generated to Michigan where the pure Michigan advertising was part of the beginning of that process. And so they do actually two studies, a regional study and a national study, where they survey consumers all over the country to figure that out. We do this study every year. It is having this research, you know, I talked earlier about how we got more and more budget money at a time when the state was really having a hard time. That's why. We started doing this study in 2004, we had the results in 2005, and we had our first budget increase in 2006. It's kind of that simple. Because now we can actually look at it and say, well, what is the campaign actually producing? I mean, you know, everybody loves it and feel, you know, yeah, the spots are beautiful, we win awards, you know, blah, blah, blah. But that's not the point. I mean, that's nice, but it's not the point. The point is this. So in 2011, last year, campaign attracted 3.2 million visitors from outside the region where the campaign was part of that motivation. 2 million from the region, 1.2 million from beyond the region. They spent $1 billion at Michigan businesses on those trips. $1 billion. That's a nice round number. I like that number. You know, the year before this, the spending was $600 million. It almost doubled in 1 year. And then they paid $70 million in sales tax, and so you do the math, which we did, and it's like $5 back for every dollar we spent on the advertising. Having this data and having the industry support this data and take this message to lawmakers and the governor's office and everybody else and the media, that's why we are where we are. I mean, this is kind of the bedrock of what we're doing. So another thing we've done, and this started back in 2002 when we had two partners, and they put in $235,000 to partner with us on some advertising. You can see now that we're up to, we had more than 40 partners, almost $4 million. This is the industry, convention bureaus, attractions, whatever, partnering with us to be part of the Pure Michigan campaign. So in each one of these cases, the partner has a Pure Michigan ad about them. It's still voiced, if it's a radio ad, it's still voiced by Tim Allen, it still has the music, it's still in the Pure Michigan brand, same for the TV, but it's not generic about the state, it's about Mackinac, or it's about Coldwater, or whatever it's about, Alpena. So we had more than 40 of those, and so when you look out on the map, all of these boxes represent a partner. And over the years, and I will tell you, a couple years ago, we said, you know, we got to be about done. I mean, who's left? And you know what? We actually have 4 more new ones for next year that were not on here yet. But you can see that over the years, we have pretty well blanketed the state with people buying into the campaign. So I'm going to show one of the partner TV spots. This is actually the Traverse City national spot that aired as part of the national cable buy, as an example.
Inside all of us is a compass, and it always points true north, toward mountains of sand, toward new sights and sensations, toward the true bounty of nature. So let's set our compass for Traverse City and find ourselves in the magic and the moments of Pure Michigan. Your trip begins at michigan.org.
So again, same brand format, same brand type of brand spot created by our agency, obviously, but in this case about the partner. And so with each one of these partnerships, we are coordinating, collaborating with the local area, in this case Traverse City, on what the messaging will be, what the script will be, if it's TV, what shooting we have to do, what film we have to shoot, if it's radio, what we're going to talk about in the radio spot. And then each of them is a little mini Pure Michigan campaign. So our agency has to place that media, buy that radio time, report the results, collect the money, all that stuff. So we end up with these kind of 40-plus little mini campaigns that we're running kind of on behalf of the industry. It's a one-to-one match. So for example, with the national partners, they put in $500,000, and we give them $1 million worth of cable out of our cable buy. So, but a local partner who puts in $75,000 to do radio in Chicago with us, then we'll buy $150,000 worth of radio and for that commercial, for that partner commercial. So we basically double the partner's money. So, I guess no wonder we have so many. We just launched a new version of .org. I mean, obviously, if you're involved in the web at all, you know that you're never done. And this is just the latest version of .org. One thing we did do with this one is what's called responsive design now, because there are so many, with the tablets and iPads and everything else, there are so many different formats that your website gets presented in that the responsive design technology allows the site to adjust based on what it's being looked at, what the device is. So you don't have to, in the old days, like a year ago, we had a mobile version of our site. We don't have to have a separate mobile version. We used to detect a mobile smartphone and then serve up a different image and site. Actually, with responsive design, you cover the whole range from a phone to a full-blown website. And it just adjusts based on whether the person has a tablet or a phone or whatever it is. And Apple's about to announce yet another size of something, a different size tablet. So there's that. The site's done real well. 5 years in a row, we've had more traffic than anybody else, more than even the Floridas and Hawaiis, which always kind of surprises people. But we're pretty aggressive about this. We do a single magazine. Actually, one thing we're changing this year, new for 2013, is we are rebranding the magazine as Pure Michigan to be more brand consistent. This year, and in recent years, we just had a single edition for the entire year. We actually are now adding a fall and winter edition of the magazine to do a better job covering those seasons, both editorially and for advertisers. So a little different next year. We have a consumer newsletter, so we have 500,000 consumers who get this every 2 weeks because they signed up for it. And I mentioned that we don't spend a lot of ad money in state. Well, stuff like this is the reason why. So most of these subscribers are Michigan residents, or a big chunk of them. So we can get information to them without putting up ads. And actually a lot more information and a lot more frequent information. So that's one of those vehicles. Obviously, we're into the social media where we have a blog, YouTube. I think we've had, 800,000 views of our commercials on YouTube, which is basically 800,000 times we didn't pay a cable company or TV station to air our spot. It's basically free to us, so that's a good thing. Flickr, I think there are probably now 15 to 20,000 photos that consumers have put on the Pure Michigan Flickr page and given us the rights to use them. So again, there's 15,000 photos that I did not hire a photographer to shoot. Now, they're not all great, but some of them are pretty great. You'd be surprised in this day of digital photography how many good photos are produced by amateurs. I mean, it's just amazing. So we have used them on our website occasionally. If we don't have a photo ourselves, obviously one of the first places we'll go look and say, well, do we have a good Flickr photo, of whatever it is we're trying to find, of that lighthouse or whatever it is. So that's helpful. Twitter's been real big for us, but the superstar is Facebook. So we now have more than 400,000 fans on Facebook. It'll be interesting to see kind of what happens to Facebook. Will it be the next MySpace? Who knows? But right now it's hot, and we have a lot of activity on our page. So for Facebook, we post 4 or 5 times a day, 7 days a week. I mean, you kind of have to. If you're going to have it and have a big fan base, then you got to deliver. And then we have all the interaction, obviously, that consumers are doing too. I will say one thing about all the social media. So when we got into social media a few years ago, it certainly changed how we deal with consumers, because basically we had not really dealt with them much up to that point, other than the welcome centers, which actually now the DOT, MDOT now runs. We did run those for a while, so we had that kind of direct facing, meet with consumers at welcome centers. But basically, since most of our contact with consumers was for them to order a visitor guide or a newsletter or something like that, not much interaction. And so what's happened is social media has forced destinations, I guess, or it's allowed destinations, depending on how you look at it, to interact with consumers on a one-on-one level, and lots of them. So it's been interesting, and it's always evolving. We're just about to launch we're doing Pinterest, and we're about to launch a few more new applications. We're doing Instagram. I mean, they're just like, it's kind of endless. Keeping up with it is a challenge, because there's always something, a new version, a new platform, whatever. We do merchandise. We have an online store. And this is really about brand, about another way to promote the Pure Michigan brand. We're not in it to make money. We make a little money, a little royalty on it, but that's really not the point. The point is another way to get Pure Michigan branding in the marketplace. And so if somebody will wear a shirt or a hat or whatever it is, that's a beautiful thing. We have a small international program right now. We hope it'll be bigger in the future. Right now, almost all of our effort is through this group called Great Lakes USA. So this is an organization run by the state tourism offices, ours, plus the offices in Ohio, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. And so the 5 of us pool some money. We put in $75,000 a year each. We have an executive director in Chicago who runs the program. He used to work for Illinois Tourism. We have representation firms. The focus of this is Germany and the UK right now. So it's just Europe, and actually just Germany, UK, not France, not Italy, not Spain. And so we do have rep firms, companies that represent the Great Lakes, both in London and in Dusseldorf. So that's pretty much it. And the goal of this program, mostly what we're trying to do is things like this. So this magazine, Essentially America, is a British travel publication. And it's interesting that, it just shows the love of America by Brits, that there's a travel magazine that the only thing they cover is one destination, that's America. So anyway, we were on the cover last summer, and that's the kind of thing we're trying to do, is get editorial coverage in travel magazines. I mentioned bringing journalists over here to actually tour the state, so they'll write stories like this. This is very similar to, this was a German travel publication that was shot on the Muskegon River. So, it's that kind of activity. We don't do advertising in London or in Frankfurt or Berlin. Don't really have the budget for that. So it's mostly trade, relationships with tour operators, and then media, a lot of media. I mentioned the trade, so this is Virgin Atlantic, or Virgin Holidays, part of the Virgin Atlantic empire. So this is a tour they created for Brits to come to the Great Lakes region. And you'll see it's kind of a Circle Lake, Michigan tour. It covers Wisconsin, Chicago, west coast of Michigan, up and the UP. The thing about these tours is, the international travelers who would do this kind of trip, first of all, no American would ever do that trip, or very few, right? I mean, that's not, we go, wait a minute, drive all around the lake, why would he do that? But typically these international visitors are doing 14 days, maybe 21 days. And so when they go to someplace, they'll do a trip that Americans would just go, no, we're not doing that. Well, in fact, the Route 66 trip is Chicago to Los Angeles, driving it. It's a long ways. And they do that. I actually saw one time in a tour operator catalog in Europe, they were selling a tour that started in Orlando, spent some time at Disney and whatever, and then drove to Los Angeles. I'm going, yeah, sure, that'd be a blast. But anyway, but for them, if you're doing 2 or 3 weeks, well, then something like this makes sense. And they do these trips. Here's kind of our schedule for international right now. We actually have a sales mission in Germany coming up in October, a trade show in London in November, another trade show in Germany in March, and then a sales mission in the UK in April. And then there's this big show in the US called Powwow, Brand USA International Powwow, which is all of the tour operators around the world who bring business to the US and US destinations all meet. So we go as a US destination, the tour operators from really every major country, so from UK, Germany, but also China and Brazil and wherever else. Anybody who's bringing significant business to the US, they all meet at this one trade show. And the goal, obviously, for us is to get the more Great Lakes and more Michigan tours included into our upper catalogs around the world. Again, primarily our focus is British and German, but others too. And the show is coming to Chicago in 14. Usually it's in places like Vegas, Los Angeles, Orlando. It's only been in Chicago one other time, and that was during the 90s. So we're glad it's going to be back in the region. And then one more thing is that on the international is Brand USA. So last year, for the first time in US history, the US actually had a national tourism promotion effort outside the country. Now, you've probably seen ads or seen some presence of things like Great Britain or Australia or New Zealand or whatever, you know, other countries advertising for tourists to come. We, as a country, have never done that. And looking back at it, you might say, well, that seems kind of silly. Why wouldn't we do that? And in some ways, it was kind of silly, but I guess it had always been felt like two things. One, well, we've got very strong private sector, you know, the Disneys, et cetera, who are doing that marketing globally. And they are, but certainly that's not helping us much here. But secondly, was just the impression that, well, everybody wants to go to the US around the world, so we don't really have to advertise. And what we saw, especially in the last decade, was that while international, that's called long-haul tourism, where you go across an ocean. So international long-haul tourism is booming worldwide. It is booming. But the US share of international long-haul tourism has steadily declined for like a decade. So finally, everybody kind of got their act together and said, you know, that doesn't make much sense. Maybe we should actually market ourselves. And so we are, as a country, but for the first time in a significant way. So they have about a $100 million budget. They launched this year in 3 or 4 markets, and they're going to add 4 more markets next year, and et cetera. It's just going to keep building. But so that actually is going on. And it's actually being paid for by a fee the US is charging international visitors to come to the US. They instituted what's called the ESTA fee. It's $14 or something. I don't know, whatever it is. But that's where the money's getting collected from. So the money's kind of piling up from people entering the US. And then this group gets to spend part of that. So about us. So when Governor Snyder came in, the other thing that happened with us in this program was Pure Michigan was strictly the tourism promotion program when it launched in 06 through 10. Snyder and our CEO, Mike Finney, and the new team basically said, you know what, we want Pure Michigan to be the brand for Michigan, for kind of all marketing. And so that's what we did. And so, and actually you'll see now we have the green M, which is the kind of the B2B M for our business activities. But now Pure Michigan is being used much more broadly by the state in all kinds of things. So that's a good thing. A couple other things we're doing is this year was our second year of sponsoring the Sprint Cup race at Michigan International Speedway in August, the Pure Michigan 400. Again, this is about, as that picture so well captures, brand. It's just reinforcing that brand over and over. Anywhere we can find a clever, effective way to do that. So the Pure Michigan 400 is one of those things. It's a great, the thing about NASCAR is this is our, like I say, our second year, and what I've certainly learned about NASCAR, and I didn't know that much about it, frankly, until we got into this, is I can't think of a sport that embraces sponsors any more than NASCAR, right? I mean, think about the cars and the outfits and the fact that the drivers are trained if they're, in fact, my friends here are from Coke, if they're a Coke driver, that they will take a swig of a Coke during a TV interview. I mean, that is genius. I mean, they are all about brands. And so they, kind of a subtle display there. It's the Gatorade victory lane. We got that going. Then we got the 3M, and we got Pure Michigan, and and Sprint. So they are such a great brand platform. Their whole sport is kind of built around that. And so obviously we've had a great experience with them, working with MIS, working with ESPN, which covers our race. And so here's the race we just had was in August, and here's some of the kind of the high points. A couple things. One is that, so on ESPN, that's as important to us, frankly, as what happens at the track, is what happens on television. Because that's what's going to be seen by a lot more people than show up for the race. And so the fact that when ESPN, part of our package with them, that when they refer to this race, whether they're promoting the coverage during the week, like, hey, tune in this Sunday at 1 o'clock for the Pure Michigan 400 on ESPN, they always refer to it as the Pure Michigan 400. And so it's that. So even their promos for their own air coverage. Of course, during the telecast itself, it's the Pure Michigan 400, that, and all that, and then the announcers refer to it, and there's the images and, and the logo and all that stuff. So we figured we got about $9 million worth of promotion out of this. Cost us about $1 million. There you go. We feel pretty good about that. The day after the race this year, as I'm wont to do, I Googled the phrase Pure Michigan 400 and hit news, and there were 1,600 stories posted with the phrase Pure Michigan 400 in them across the country. And most of them were just race result stories. Who won, right? But they showed up everywhere. And so, so that's kind of our rationale for doing something like this, is brand reinforcement. Now, what's interesting is this is actually the June race, and because of the way MIS does our sponsorships, Quicken Loans is the sponsor of that race, and we're the sponsor of the August race, but we both have signage up at both races. So we get a lot of spill brand promotion during the June race, even though it's not our race. And Quicken does the same during our race. So again, it's just brand reinforcement. One thing we did this year is we gave away a car. This was a Roush Stage 1 Mustang. And so we had a Pure Michigan 400 sweepstakes, and this is the car actually in the train station in Chicago. So we took it all over the place, to promote the race. And again, every one of these was a brand promotion, because you're not going to be able to talk about this car or the giveaway without mentioning Pure Michigan a couple times, on TV or whatever, because the car was then given away at the race. And we had a very happy winner, as you can see. She was quite happy. So 75,000 people signed up online to enter to win. About half of them signed up for our newsletter. So we got about 35,000, 40,000 more newsletter signups just from the contest. So we'll definitely be doing this again. It was very successful. We sponsored one car this year. This was at a race in Texas in April. And we sponsored, this was the nationwide series, the second level down series of NASCAR. So you can see there is the Pure Michigan branded car. And it's the only race we sponsored this year. We did this with Roush Fenway Racing. And son of a gun, if he didn't win it. So that is Ricky Stenhouse Jr., up-and-coming NASCAR star in the winner's circle that I'm sure was branded for somebody, whatever, with our branded car. And I told the Roush people, I said, if you can just tell me which ones Ricky's going to win, we'll buy all those. We just don't want the other ones. Doesn't really work that way. Coke. I mentioned Coke and our partnership with Coke. So we, this year, launched a co-branding with Coca-Cola. And, I think that for me and Mark and everybody on the Coke team, it was just a great way to put two brands together. I mean, we were thrilled to do this. I mean, Coca-Cola is one of the most iconic brands in the world. And so the fact that we could associate with each other and kind of have a message that made sense for both of us and put that out there in the marketplace was a great thing. And so, we did some sweepstakes. We did the co-branding on the billboards, which you saw, radio ads, truck backs, vending machines. I got a couple more examples here. And this is what the rewards thing looked like on My Coke Rewards. This was the contest to win 4 trips to Michigan. So that was a nice thing. And then this is what a truck back looked like. And again, co-branded. And then vending machines. So again, and again, what's it all about for us? Brand reinforcement, Pure Michigan everywhere, everywhere. Which brings us to this. So we also, this year for the first time, started working with the Tigers. And we told them, look, our primary interest is the ballpark, yes, the people there, yes, but mostly TV. So those displays that you get we get, I think, half an inning per game, different innings in different games, that's about television. It doesn't look very big in the stadium, but it's framed for television. And so is this. This was about television, doing the backs of the benches and the dugout, and then doing even more effectively the rails, which have gotten a lot of media airtime, TV time, because anytime they go to somebody in the dugout, and actually we now have the second rail painted Pure Michigan too. So now, if you watch the game tonight, which many of you probably will, you will not see any of this, because Major League Baseball takes it all away during the playoffs, because they have their sponsors who get all this stuff. So don't look tonight, because it'll be back next season, but our deal with them is for the regular season. And then we also put up for the stadium this sign in right field. So that's, again, but the whole thing is about brand. In fact, so we the only time we bought TV commercials inside the games was like for example in the spring when we were playing the Red Sox, we bought some Pure Michigan commercials and aired them during the game in Boston, but not in Detroit. Because again, our focus was to get more out-of-state visitors, so we didn't feel like we needed the home market so much, but a chance to be in the away market, you know, to reinforce all this branding that was going on during the game and then also run spots. So we did do that. We did the Grand Prix on Belle Isle. Again, it's all about branding, obviously. Kroger is now working with us. You know, I don't know if you've been to a Kroger recently, but the one I go to in Okemos, it's starting to look like a Pure Michigan store. So they're doing signage with posters over the agricultural products and produce. They're doing around the milk, they're doing clings on the milk doors to the dairy stuff. And again, it's just a kind of a, similar to the Coca-Cola arrangement, kind of a joint branding effort. Mario Batali is a well-known chef. He is on The Chew, an ABC show. It airs daily, I think, at 1 o'clock, most markets. So anyway, he is this huge fan of Traverse City and talks about it all the time and, you know, whatever. So we actually took advantage of it this year and hired him for a day to do some media for us. And literally from Traverse City, he did 32 live shots on local radio and TV stations around the country in a row, which I had never seen before. I mean, he was a machine. So he was, the hook for doing the segments was we offered TV stations around the country a chance to have cookout tips for the 4th of July weekend from a celebrity chef. And so for the TV versions of it, he actually was cooking during the segments. He made up some little things that were kind of an easy recipe and talked about them, but invariably the people would say, well, Mario, you know, it's beautiful. This was at a winery, obviously, and they said, well, where are you at? And he goes, oh, Traverse City, Michigan. You know, I come here every summer. I love it here. And, you know, so it was a real soft sell for Michigan. And again, the segment really wasn't about Michigan. It was about cooking tips. At least that's what they bought. You know, that's what they bid on. But he did 30. You know, so he does San Francisco morning TV, followed by, you know, Las Vegas morning radio, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, did 32 times. Basically did the same spiel 32 times. Sometimes, which I've been there myself, he couldn't quite remember if he had said something during that spiel or the one before, so, you know, but he was great. We're working a lot with state agencies. These are a couple of billboards. Actually, Linda's here from Ag, and so there's the agricultural billboard, parks billboard, you know, just, again, more ways to reinforce the brand with other state partners. And really, the main goal for us, the big goal for us has always been this. You know, I mentioned the shelf life of tourism marketing campaigns, 4 years, 8 years, you know, down and out. Not these two. So I Love New York was created in 1977, and Virginia's for Lovers launched in the 60s. And they have hung in there. And they're kind of about the only two that really have. And that's what we're trying to be, is that kind of staying power, reinforcement brand. And that's why when I was kind of going through all the stuff we're doing, whether it's Tigers or NASCAR or whatever, it is that reinforced brand. And some of the things, so like when we got this done a couple years ago, this was hugely important to us. Because it's kind of putting a stake in the ground, literally in this case, 2 stakes, and saying this is the state marketing brand. Because this is at the entry point on 75 northbound from Toledo and 94 eastbound from Indiana, et cetera. The number of views that those get because of the traffic on those interstates is just off the chart. Brand reinforcement. We have a similar one that starts next year. So, starting in the spring, I'm not sure exactly what date, when they run out of the old materials, this will be the standard plate. Not a vanity plate, the plate. The standard plate. So, I think they produce about 1 million a year of the standard plate as people get new cars and, you know, change license plates, whatever. Again, the exposures we will get from this for the brand, off the chart. And the thing is, our cost invested in this, a couple meetings at the Secretary of State's office. That's it. I mean, because it doesn't cost the state anymore to change the design. Same, you know, it's the same level of materials, you know, et cetera, et cetera. It's just that now it's our brand and our URL that'll be on those plates. So that's a huge thing. So finally, to kind of wrap up here, and I'll take some questions if we have time. I'll have to look at the time. So a couple years ago, we had noticed the expansion of what Pure Michigan meant as a brand and a phrase. When I saw this obit for Ernie Harwell, ironic we'd be doing this with the Tigers and everything else, this kind of captured that. And that is, so this was his obit, and so the Grand Rapids Press, in their obit of his passing, referred to his voice as Pure Michigan. And you know, what that's about to me is that the phrase now has come to mean, certainly in-state in particular, anything that's authentically, positively Michigan. And we see it used a lot, whether it's sporting events or people talking about the lakes or rivers or, you know, people use the phrase with kind of that definition. And this was just kind of a good example of that. So that's kind of a cool thing. This is also something that we've heard about the last year or so. So I mentioned how out of the national campaign, you know, was the start of a lot of things and was kind of a page turner, big jump for us. This is part of it. So there were two stories. This one was about a month ago, I think, and there was one in the Detroit News a couple weeks ago, almost exactly the same storyline, which is there are people buying second homes now in Michigan from places where they usually didn't used to come from. I mean, because we've always had this with Chicago people and St. Louis people and, you know, kind of those regional markets. That's been going on for generations. This is talking about New Yorkers buying in northern Michigan, basically. Traverse City in particular. And again, I think some of it's the Mario effect because he talks it up so much. But part of it is just the national campaign too. It starts with tourism. Why do so many Chicago people own places along the west side of the state? Well, because at some point, somewhere back in time, they and their family, you know, went to West Michigan to get away from the city and went on vacation. And then they kept going back and saying, you know, it's kind of nice over here. You know, maybe we should buy a place. Look at New Buffalo, look at South Haven, look at those towns and see the ratio of Chicago people who have moved there, retired there, second home there, whatever there. Now it's this. And you know, the other place we're seeing is Texas. And Texas is particularly good for us in our national efforts. Why? I grew up in Dallas, so I can say this. Summers there are terrible. I mean, it's terrible. I mean, you know, we had a hot summer this year here. You ain't seen nothing. That'd be, you know, they have incredibly hot summers. They've had droughts going on for years now. A lot of the lakes are really down. I mean, like half their water's gone or whatever. So you think about that summer experience with ours, they are a prime target for us. We're going to actually do some special stuff in Texas. We did that one race there. That's why we went there. That's why we did Dallas. Because there's something going on there with Texas and them trying to escape the heat and go somewhere nice in the summer. Because it's not nice there. So, as we're looking forward, one thing we're looking at is, so this is leisure, does not include business travel, which is why these are a little bit smaller than the other numbers, but, so we're 14th right now. And the industry right now, the tourism industry is working on a strategic plan to figure out what we should be when it's 2017. So 5 years from now, what should the industry be like and what should we accomplish and all that. And I can tell you that for me, we should be a lot higher on that list. I mean, the fact that even with everything we've got going, that, you know, Ohio, Illinois, North Carolina, they're getting more visitor spending than we are on leisure travel, we can do better than that, and we will. It's just a question of how fast we do it, but that's kind of what we're looking at. I mean, I don't think we'll be up here, but certainly in this group right here, the 12 to 16 billion, we should be up near the top of that list than we are. And then it jumps up pretty quick to New York State because of New York City and all that. So, so to close, this is kind of what and this goes to the plan I was talking about. This is what we want to be when we grow up. We want to be known as one of the best vacation destinations in America. We are not there now. We are just starting this. You know, even though we've been doing national advertising for this is our 4th year, we still view this as we're at the beginning. We are just starting this. There are millions, tens of millions of Americans who have never even thought about taking a vacation here yet. That's what we got to work on. That's what we got to change. But that's what the brand's about, and having a successful brand makes that certainly makes it possible to move the needle on that stuff. And I'm going to play one more clip that's about brand, and then we'll take questions if we have time.
You know, summer is right around the corner. Have you noticed on TV now different states are coming out with vacation ads for that state? Like Michigan has that one, Pure Michigan. See the lakes of Michigan. See the Henry Ford Museum. Florida has theirs. Come to Florida. Go to Disney World. Go to Miami. See the beaches. Even South Dakota. South Dakota has a vacation. Here, show their ad.
Spend a week in South Dakota. On Monday, see Mount Rushmore. On Tuesday, see Mount Rushmore again. On Wednesday, visit the gift shop at Mount Rushmore. And on Thursday, relive your first experience at Mount Rushmore.
Fantastic. Oh, trip of a lifetime.
So I like that for two reasons. One, I'm not the South Dakota Tourism Director. That's a good thing. I know the South Dakota Tourism Director. He was not as amused, perhaps. But secondly, so when some writer in Burbank said, hey, we're doing this parody commercial about South Dakota tourism, we need a couple lines of setup for it to talk about states and tourism. The first one that writer in Burbank put in that script was Pure Michigan. And that's a big deal. So that just kind of reinforces that, yeah, we may be doing it slowly and with a modest national budget, whatever, but it is happening. Because even if you'll notice, when he mentioned Pure Michigan, he knew our branding. When he mentioned Florida, he just knew Florida generically as a destination, didn't really know what their branding was. So to me, that is the kind of the sign of the progress we've made so far. When this ran and we heard about it the next day, we went, holy cow, that's pretty darn good. But again, it's just that, so somebody on the West Coast, the first thing they thought of was they did to do the setup for the script for the parody, was that. So how are we doing on time? What time is it? Yeah, a few questions? Yes?
I just have a comment. Actually, that ad sort of looked like a Pure Michigan ad, too, with the voice. The voice sounded like Tim Allen.
Yeah.
As a script.
Yeah, true. Yes?
Twice did they, for your commercials, use Tim Allen?
Why?
Yes.
So when we at McCann were in 2006, we kind of putting the campaign together and the brand together. We talked about the voice, and Tim Allen was the first on the list because one, he does a lot of good voice. He has a good voice talent. He does, he's done Toy Story and all that stuff. But also it was part of the story. The whole thing about Pure Michigan is I mentioned that, authentic. Well, Tim Allen knows Michigan. So when he reads a script about the Assault River, not only does he pronounce it right, he knows what it's like. So, I'm not saying other people couldn't have done it, but I think having to do it has been a huge plus for us. And now that he has the kind of the cadence of the campaign in his head, he rolls through those scripts very efficiently. So, yes.
Yeah, on your return of investment section,
yeah.
How did you come up with that $1 billion number?
So the research company comes up with the number of trips motivated by the campaign. And then we have actually even a bigger sample of travelers to Michigan, and we know how much on average they spend. And so you just do that.
But how do you know that's a cause and effect from the advertising? Is there...
Right, so what Longwoods figures out is how many trips were motivated by the advertising for that season. And the way they do it is they do a national survey. They survey.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, so they do a regional, they actually do two samples for us, a regional sample of the regional states, so we can separate them, and then a whole country survey. And it's not cheap for us to do, but it's been worth it every time. It's about $200,000 every time.
Wow.
Yep.
In the slide that had how much leisure money was spent in the different, states.
Yeah.
And we were down to
14,
14.
yeah.
Does that take into account the different costs? In other words, obviously it's more expensive to go to New York.
Sure, absolutely it does.
So, but does it adjust for that? It's cheaper to go to Michigan. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So less money is spent, but you may have more people. It's
Correct.
very kind of.
Yeah, and yes, and we focus on the money because it's the money that generates the jobs. It's so it's the amount of money that business owner takes in that's more important than the volume to us. And that's one thing interesting about the national tourist agreement. So, you know, if you're coming here from Indianapolis or from Chicago or wherever, well, you can come to Michigan for a day or two, right? I mean, we're close enough for those regional markets. You know, Cleveland, you can come for a ball game and go home that night if you want to, I mean, whatever. I mean, so if you're coming here from Dallas, you're not coming for a weekend. You're coming for probably at least 5 nights, maybe 7. So that's the other thing about the national is every one of those more distant travelers will end up spending a lot more. And that's just a truism of tourism marketing. The further you away from that you come from, the more you spend because you'll just be here more. Because you're not going to drive here or even fly here from Dallas for one overnight. You know, it's just a wedding or something. You know, but I mean, typical leisure trip, no. And so that's why the other risk financial is really important because those more distant visitors are going to spend a lot more on the trip.
You mentioned at the beginning that business travelers or business travel isn't really a large target of pure Michigan.
It's not, yeah.
But I'm trying to understand, I mean, the convention travel for a lot of large corporations,
Yep.
This is a wonderful destination for that. So, you know, have you considered that in the future?
Yeah, so typically, and this is true in most states, typically we leave the convention travel marketing to convention bureaus. So for instance, for Detroit, it's Detroit Metro Convention and Visitor Bureau. They have salespeople out selling Detroit as a convention destination. And I think that the Pure Michigan branding puts a nice halo on those efforts. You know, that people are aware of it. They have a little better impression of the state in general. But we don't want to step on what they're doing. And so they are doing those sales. We do a little bit with the corporate meetings market where we help fund some of that small dollar amount. But mostly it's the convention bureaus that have the space that actually have salespeople out there. So, but I do think the brand is still a halo for all those things. I think we're done. Thank you.
Thank you, George, very much.